Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today let's discuss the biography of the famous Indian writer Arundhati Roy. Arundhati Roy, born in 1961. Arundhati Roy is a globally renowned Indian novelist and activist whose work combines Indian's literary beauty with an uncompromising political courage. She remains one of the world's most powerful voices for justice, equality, and human freedom. Her full name, Susanna Arundhati Roy. She was born in 1961 in Shillong, Meghalaya, India. Childhood. Arundhati Roy was born to a Bengali Hindu tea plantation manager, Rajiv Roy, and a Syrian Christian mother from Kerala, Mary Roy. Her parents separated when she was very young, leading to a difficult, unstable childhood. She was mostly raised by her mother in Aymanam, Kerala, in a simple environment. Childhood experiences in traditional Kerala households, caste divisions, and a small emotional world that later formed the emotional core of her work, The God of Small Things. She grew up watching her mother fight patriarchal systems, including the famous legal battle for women's inheritance rights. This shaped Roy's lifelong stance against structural injustice. Education. She attended several schools because of financial hardships and a parents' separation. She was educated at a Corpus Christi school, Kottayam in Kerala, then School of Architecture, Delhi, and graduated from the Delhi School of Architecture with a degree in architecture. Architectural training sharpened her views on urban inequity, infrastructure politics, and environmental justice, which deeply influenced her activist writings. Personal life. First marriage. Gerald da Cunha, an architect, short-lived. Second marriage. Pradeep Krishan, an environmentalist and a filmmaker. They collaborated professionally, later separated, but maintained mutual respect. She does not have children and is private about her relationships. She lives in Delhi in a modest home, avoids luxury despite being world famous. She lives a minimalist life, often traveling to forest, tribal villages, and conflict zones for research and activism. Her career overview, early phase. She worked briefly as an architect, acted in and wrote screenplays for films, worked as a research assistant, and also in non-mainstream cinema. Her literary breakthrough. In 1997, published The God of Small Things, her debut novel, became an international sensation. She won the Booker Prize, making her one of the most celebrated Indian writers of all time. Her shift to activism. After 1997, Roy focused largely on human rights, anti-globalization movements, anti-dam activism, tribal and Adivasi rights, criticism of nationalism and militarization. She wrote powerful political essays challenging both India's and the world's power structures. And her return to fiction happened in 2017 when she published the work The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, another globally acclaimed novel. Now moving on to the discussion of Arundhati Roy's books. First of all, The God of Small Things, 1997. The God of Small Things is a novel that traces the intertwined childhoods of twins Esther and Wahil as they grow up in the emotionally charged and a culturally complex world of Kerala. The story unfolds through a non-linear narrative that reveals how small, seemingly insignificant moments accumulate into life-altering tragedies. At the center of the novel lies the forbidden love between Ammu and Beluta, a relationship that shatters the rigid caste boundaries of the region. Arundhati Roi uses lush, poetic language to reveal how innocence is slowly crushed under the weight of social rules, political tensions, and family secrets. The novel portrays the tension between personal desires and the oppressive cultural norms that dictate who may love whom and under what conditions. Through the twins' fractured memories, Arundhati Roy shows how trauma lingers, shaping their adult lives long after the events that destroyed their childhood. The narrative highlights how deeply caste, patriarchy, and a social hierarchy infiltrate the smallest details of daily lives. The lush landscape of Kerala became a haunting backdrop to the devastation caused by human cruelty and societal intolerance. In exploring these themes, Arundhati Roy exposes the vulnerability of those who dare to cross boundaries in a system built on exclusion and punishment. Ultimately, the novel stands as a profound meditation on love, loss, injustice, and the destructive power of social systems that deny humanity in the name of order. The next work, that is The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, published in 2017. The Ministry of Utmost Happiness is an expansive novel that follows a wide cast of characters whose lives intersect across the political and emotional landscapes of contemporary India. At its heart is the character Anchum, a transgender woman who finds refuge in a makeshift graveyard guest house after surviving brutality and exclusion. Her story is interwoven with that of the character Tilo, a woman whose life becomes bound to resistance movements and the prolonged conflicts in Kashmir. The novel spans decades, touching on communal violence, state oppression, and the resilience of individuals who refuse to be erased. Arundhati Roy blends personal stories with national tragedies, revealing how the most private emotions exist within the shadow of political unrest. The work shifts between intimate interior worlds and sweeping historical realities, creating a tapestry of suffering, hope, and defiance. Each character carries wounds that reflect the fractures within the nation, from marginalized gender identities to communities living under military occupation. Arundhati Roy moves fluidly between humor, grief, and activism, making the narrative both poetic and politically charged. The novel suggests that alternative forms of family and a sanctuary can emerge even in places marked by loss and conflict. Ultimately, the story becomes a testament to the resilience of those who, in the midst of despair, create small spaces of love, dignity, and togetherness. Now let's talk about the screenplays written by Arundhati Roy. The first one, In Which Annie Gives It Those Ones, 1989. a satirical television film about architecture students rebelling against meaningless educational systems. The next work, Electric Moon, 1992, a witty critique of post-colonial tourism and the Western gaze on India. Arundhati Roy's political and non-fiction works, the first one, The Cost of Living, 1999, essays condemning big dams and destructive development policies that displace millions. The next work, Power Politics 2001, a sharp critique of corporate globalization and energy politics in India. The next work, War Talk 2003, essays examining militarism, nationalism and a global war rhetoric post 9/11. An Ordinary Person's Guide to Empire came out in 2004 that explores how modern empires are built through war, media control, and a political manipulation. The next work, Field Notes on Democracy 2009, documents how democratic institutions collapse under communalism and a corporate influence. The next work, Broken Republic 2011, reports from the forests of central India about Adivasi resistance and state violence. The next work, Capitalism, A Ghost Story 2014, uncovers how capitalism manipulates democracy, philanthropy, and public memory. The next work, The Algebra of Infinite Justice, 2002, essays reflecting on global injustice, war, and India's shifting political landscape. The next work, Listening to Grasshoppers, 2009, a reflection on fascism, genocide, and the fragility of political freedom. The next work, Azadi, 2020, meditations on freedom, nationalism, and a dissent in an increasingly authoritarian India. Now let's talk about the key themes in Arundhati Roy's works. Caste violence and Dalit oppression, childhood trauma and memory, gender and sexuality, including queer narratives, environmental justice and anti-dam movements, human rights and resistance politics, anti-capitalism and anti-globalization critiques, Kashmir conflict and militarization, post-colonial identity and imperialism, state-backed violence and political silencing, voices of marginalized communities, displacement, homelessness and statelessness, weaponization of nationalism and religion. Now moving on to the honors and awards received by Arundhati Roy. First of all, Booker Prize in 1997 for her work The God of Small Things. Sydney Peace Prize in 2004 for advocacy of social justice and resistance. Lenin Cultural Freedom Prize in 2002 for commitment to human rights. Norman Mailer Prize for distinguished writing in 2011. Kraft Prize for Peace in 2003. Numerous honorary doctorates and international recognitions. Arundhati Roy's political and social engagement. Arundhati Roy is one of India's most fearless public intellectuals and activists. Her major areas include Narmada Bachao Andolan, dam displacement, Kashmir human rights movement, Adivasi and tribal rights in central India, anti-mining campaigns, anti-nuclear activism, opposition to militarism and war, critique of Hindutva nationalism, support for LGBTQ plus rights, defense of political prisoners, students and activists, risks and backlash. Charged with sedition for speeches on Kashmir, subjected to intense political attacks and media hostility, faces surveillance and threats, yet she continues to speak boldly. Legacy of Arundhathi Roy. She redefined Indian English literature with one revolutionary novel, became the face of literary activism globally, influenced the feminist writing, Dalit discourse, eco-critical writings, and post-colonial studies. Inspired generations of activists, intellectuals, and global writers. One of the few writers whose activism is as significant as her literary achievements. The God of Small Things remains one of the greatest novels of the 20th century, continues to shape critical thinking on nationalism, democracy, and human rights. Donated her entire Booker Prize earnings to social movements. Lived inside Maoist Adivasi communities to document their stories firsthand. Was one of the earliest global voices to criticize the Iraq War. Introduced a literary model where fiction and political non-fiction reinforce each other. Refused all positions of privilege, awards, and committees that would compromise her independence. Turned the global fame into a tool for amplifying marginalized voices, not a personal branding. She once worked selling cakes and tea in a small shop as a young girl, acted in a TV film, and even won a national award for script writing, designed furniture and buildings before becoming a writer. She writes much of her work by hand. She swims regularly and prefers natural water bodies to pools. Has no interest in commercial cinema, though approached many times. Lives without air conditioning to reduce ecological impact. Refuses to employ domestic workers. Chooses self-sufficient living. Prefers anonymity and silence when not engaged in activism.